I wanted to bring this up. This is not really news necessarily, Sarah, but I sent you this quote yesterday, and you and I both really enjoyed this because this is a bishop. This comes from a bishop who has been seeing a lot more visibility lately, partly because Pope Leo has put him out front. He led the Lenten mission for the Roman Curia at the behest of Pope Leo, and so his star is kind of rising here in the church, and he's an excellent, traditionally minded bishop here, very good Orthodox bishop.
I've also
from Norway.
read a couple of his books.
Yeah.
This is Bishop Erik Varden. Sorry.
Yes, I was going to tease the name until we get to it. Yes.
But I've read a couple of his books too, and he's an amazing writer.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want some sort of spiritual content there, his audiobooks especially, I've been deeply enjoying whilst I drive to the Mass on a Sunday, because it's a long drive here in the Charlotte Diocese. Not complain, just saying.
Yes, indeed. Something to offer up, right? Well, here is a great quote that just came across my radar yesterday, and it reminded me of many issues in the church. But Bishop Varden says, and this is from a book on chastity that he wrote, but this quote, a couple paragraphs. A mystique of discernment has emerged, as if being in discernment were a vocation in its own right. We largely look in vain for such a quest in early Christian literature. The Desert Fathers tend to be matter-of-fact, practical, even pragmatic in accounts of their life choice. They rarely invoke Damascus Road epiphanies. What they do speak of is a rational decision to follow Christ without compromise. The motivation underlying a decision to embrace the pursuit of perfection is, then, objective and rational. It springs up from a desire to follow the Gospels and live up to obligations contracted at baptism. At the source is a decision rooted in free will, carried by faith. This is later instilled with spiritual desire, so that affectivity can make its contribution. Thus far, Bishop Erik Varden. And I really, really loved this quote because it's something that I can sympathize with in any developments that I've made. I won't say I've grown very much spiritually necessarily. I have a lot to go, far way to go, but any improvements, any differences I've made have not really come from a single kind of light bulb moment. This Damascus Road epiphany, like he says, of our Lord, literally knocking Saul off his horse and saying, okay, yeah, you're St. Paul now. That it's this way of kind of reading your way into the faith, or just kind of understanding it objectively, rationally, not letting your emotions carry you away. And in particular, the way that he calls out this mystique of discernment, where, it's all about discernment. Yeah. You have to discern. You have to spend tons and tons of time discerning. And it reminded me of what we keep hearing with things like synodality, ecumenism, where not always, but it usually implies or outright explicitly promotes this constant process, this constant state of just talking and listening and talking and discerning and, really and listening and talking and not getting anything done and not ever coming to the proper conclusion. And that's one of the things that's I think that's, to me, that's far more frustrating than any alleged threats to doctrine, because doctrine can't change, so God will protect that. But the constant distraction of, we have to just keep talking and listening and talking and listening, that I think is by far the most damaging aspect of these concepts when misused to, other souls.
Oh, yeah, it's constant, really scandal by pretending like perhaps certain things can change that cannot change.
We can discern our way out of this in some way.
Yeah, exactly. If we can just, discern a loophole.
yes, discerning loopholes, exactly.
And it kind of becomes like that. Mm-hmm. And, he's talking about the Desert Fathers here, and he's talking about early Christian literature. It's like, well, we already kind of have, the doctrine there, and I think that's in part the point.
Yes.
We can kind of look there, and a lot of the answers are already provided, and it becomes a point where you have to say, okay, well, how then might I live, right? In recognition of the fact that so much of the discernment has actually been done, how might I live as a faithful Catholic, recognizing that the church is the vehicle of faith in our time and in every time, and instead you have I think some individuals want to do this, and then you have some groups who also in this sort of synodality vein want to do this, to engage in this perpetual motion without direction. I'm gonna call it,
that's a good way. Yes, exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, where it's just it kind of feels like you're doing something even though you're actually not. It kind of reminds me of some corporate atmospheres, where you're like, how do we look busy?
Yes.
It's almost a joke.
Let's have a meeting about the meeting that we're going to have to discuss the meeting we're going to have. Yeah, exactly. And
that's not piety. It's not growth in the church.
Yes.
It's actually contrary to all of those things. I do appreciate someone who's rising in the church, ironically.
Yeah.
Like Bishop Erik Varden, who's getting, I think, good notice.
Yes.
Because it's like we hear so much about difficult bishops and difficult synods and so on.
Sure.
I really appreciate the contrast of somebody who's willing to speak very clearly about the truths of the faith.
And I think when a bishop like him speaks out like that, it's going to encourage other bishops who've raised concerns, like we discussed last week with some of the American bishops who said, synodality is really confusing and the lay people don't get it. Can we simplify this and just move on and actually move forward? Maybe they will be encouraged to continue pushing that with voices like Erik Varden putting such a great spiritual spin on it.